Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered what it truly feels like when someone walks away and refuses to return? Not with anger, not with drama, but with calm, unwavering strength? Today, I want to reveal a truth that many refuse to see. Narcissists feel your absence every single day. They may mask it with arrogance, distractions, or bravado, but inside, the void you leave cannot be ignored. Every silent moment, every choice to live fully without them becomes proof of your power, your peace, and your freedom. And that is a truth they cannot escape. When you leave a narcissist, your absence becomes something they can't distract themselves from. It acts like a mirror placed directly in front of them, reflecting everything they avoided while you were present. While you were there, your patience, empathy, and emotional labor softened their reality. You absorbed their moods, adjusted your boundaries, and often questioned yourself so they wouldn't have to question themselves. Your presence allowed them to remain comfortable in their illusions. Once you're gone, that comfort disappears. The mirror of absence shows them the impact of their behavior without you having to say a word. They are forced to sit with the consequences of what they dismissed, minimized, or controlled. Not because they suddenly gain deep self-awareness, but because something essential is missing and they can't replace it the same way. The silence where your understanding used to be becomes impossible to ignore. A narcissist thrives on control, validation, and reaction. Your absence removes all three. There is no one to reflect their importance back to them, no one to regulate their emotions, and no one to stabilize their inner chaos. That's when discomfort sets in. The mirror doesn't show them your pain as much as it shows them their loss of influence. And that loss is deeply unsettling. What makes this mirror so powerful is that it requires no confrontation. You don't need to defend yourself or explain your departure. Your absence itself communicates the truth. It tells them they were not as powerful as they believed. It exposes the gap between who they thought they were and how they treated someone who genuinely cared. In that reflection, they may feel anger, confusion, or emptiness. They may deny it publicly, but privately the mirror remains. And every day you stay gone, that mirror continues to reflect the one truth they tried to avoid. They did not win by losing you. Once that mirror of absence is placed in front of them, something even more uncomfortable begins to surface. Because when the reflection stares back long enough, the ego they relied on starts to crack, revealing what was hidden underneath all along. This is where the illusion of confidence collapses, and the truth steps forward. Beneath the charm, the superiority, and the control lies a deep, unspoken emptiness. A narcissist's ego is loud by design. It performs, exaggerates, and demands attention because it has to. It exists to cover a void they don't know how to fill on their own. While you were there, your presence masked that emptiness. Your validation, loyalty, and emotional availability acted like constant noise, drowning out the silence they feared. They didn't need to feel what was missing because you were always supplying what they lacked. But when you leave, the noise stops. And silence has a way of exposing what ego cannot hide. They may appear fine to the world. They may replace you quickly, boast loudly, or act unbothered. But those behaviors aren't proof of strength. They are evidence of discomfort. Because for the first time, they are left alone with themselves. And the emptiness you once unknowingly filled becomes undeniable. This is why your absence doesn't just hurt their pride, it unsettles their foundation. Ego needs reflection to survive. It needs someone to admire, reassure, and respond. Without you, there's nothing to reinforce the image they work so hard to maintain. The confidence fades when no one is there to witness it. The superiority feels hollow when there's no one left to stand beneath it. So even if they never admit it, even if they never slow down long enough to name it, they feel it in quiet moments, in fleeting thoughts, in the spaces you once occupied. Your absence doesn't just remove a person from their life, it exposes the emptiness they were running from, and that is something no performance can escape. And when that emptiness rises to the surface, it begins to demand something, not healing, not reflection, but fuel. Because narcissists don't sit with emptiness, they try to fill it fast. This is where the loss truly registers, in a way that cuts deeper than pride or image. What they lost wasn't just your presence, they lost their supply. Supply is the emotional energy they fed on every day. Your attention, your reactions, your empathy, your forgiveness. The way you showed up, even when it hurt. The way you tried to understand them, excuse them, stay longer than you should have. That energy stabilized them. It kept the inner void quiet. It made them feel powerful, important, needed. When you walked away, that source was cut off. And suddenly, the emptiness has teeth. They may scramble to replace what you gave, new faces, new admirers, new distractions, but it never lands the same. Because what made your supply valuable wasn't just that you gave it. It was that you gave it consistently, sincerely, and deeply. You invested, you cared, you believed. That kind of emotional nourishment isn't easily duplicated. This is why your absence lingers. It's not about missing you in a sentimental way. It's about the shock of losing access, the shock of realizing that the emotional well they relied on is no longer available. They feel it in moments of irritation, restlessness, and sudden anger that seems to come from nowhere. They feel it when no one reacts the way you did, when no one absorbs them the way you once did. The most unsettling part for them is this: they can't demand it back. They can't force genuine energy. They can't manufacture the connection they lost. The supply you provided was tied to your presence, your patience, your willingness to stay. Once you're gone, the flow stops, and every day they wake up without that emotional fuel, they are reminded, consciously or not, that something vital is missing. Your absence doesn't starve them instantly, it wears on them slowly, quietly, persistently, and that is why they feel it every single day. And as that emotional fuel disappears, something unexpected happens. The noise they create to distract themselves no longer works the way it used to. The constant talking, the subtle jabs, the dramatic reactions, all of it starts to lose its effect. Because the person who once responded, reacted, and absorbed it all is no longer there. And in that space, silence begins to speak. Silence becomes the loudest message you ever sent. No contact, no explanations, no emotional breadcrumbs left behind, just absence. And for a narcissist, silence is unbearable because it offers no feedback. There's no reassurance, no argument to win, no emotions to provoke. Without reaction, they have nothing to push against. It's like shouting into an empty room and realizing no one is listening anymore. This is when they begin to feel your absence in a deeper way, not through words, but through the quiet realization that they no longer have access to you. Silence tells them what arguments never could, that you mattered more than they allowed themselves to admit. Because if you truly meant nothing, your absence wouldn't echo like this. It wouldn't linger. It wouldn't disturb their peace. Silence removes the illusion of control. When you stop responding, you stop reinforcing their importance. You stop validating their power. And that absence of response forces them to confront a truth they can't rewrite. You chose yourself. Every unanswered message, every moment you don't check in, every day you live your life without their involvement sends a message without words. It says you no longer need their approval. It says you are no longer available for manipulation. It says the connection they once relied on has ended on your terms. And that kind of silence is not empty. It's full of meaning, full of finality, full of strength. They may tell others you disappeared. They may pretend they don't care. But silence doesn't need permission to be powerful. It doesn't need acknowledgement to be effective. It simply exists. And every day that silence remains unbroken, it reminds them that something real, something valuable is gone. Not because you explained it, but because you stopped explaining yourself. And in that unbroken silence, something shifts. Not just in them, but in you. Because when you stop responding, stop defending, stop trying to be understood, the balance of power quietly changes hands. There is no dramatic moment, no announcement, no victory speech. The shift happens the moment you choose peace over participation. For a long time, power felt like it belonged to the one who spoke the loudest, controlled the narrative, or demanded the most attention. They believed power meant dominance. But walking away reveals a deeper truth. Real power doesn't argue, doesn't chase, and doesn't need to be proven. It simply leaves. By choosing silence, you reclaim what was slowly taken from you, your energy, your clarity, your sense of self. You stop pouring yourself into someone who only valued what you provided, not who you were. And that quiet withdrawal unsettles them more than any confrontation ever could, because they can't fight it, they can't twist it, they can't win against something that refuses to engage. This is where the power shift becomes undeniable. They are left reacting to your absence while you are no longer reacting to them. They wonder. You heal. They replay conversation. You build new ones. They feel the loss of control while you feel the return of inner stability. And that reversal is deeply uncomfortable for someone who needed to feel in charge. What makes this shift so profound is that it requires no revenge. You don't expose them. You don't demand accountability. You don't seek validation from others. You simply remove yourself. And in doing so, you take back the authority over your life. They may never admit that they lost power. They may mask it with indifference or superiority. But beneath the surface, they feel it every day, the absence of someone they could once influence, the absence of someone who once centered their world around them. And in that quiet, powerful withdrawal, you discover something essential. The moment you stop trying to win, you finally reclaim yourself. And when that power slips beyond their reach, another struggle begins. One they are especially unprepared for, endings they did not control. Because for someone who needs to dominate the narrative, an unresolved ending is not just uncomfortable, it's tormenting. They are used to deciding when things start, when they end, and how they are remembered. They rewrite stories to protect their image. They close doors only when it benefits them. But when you walk away without permission, without closure on their terms, you leave behind something they cannot stand, unfinished business. Your quiet exit disrupts their sense of order. There is no final argument they can end twist. No apology they can dismiss. No dramatic scene they can retell in their favor. Instead, there is a blank space where control should be, and that blank space follows them. It lingers in moments when they try to move on but can't quite shake the feeling that something ended without their approval. They replay interactions not because they missed the connection, but because they're searching for control they lost. They wonder what you're thinking. They wonder how you're living. They wonder if they miscalculated. And that wondering is the price of an ending they never signed off on. This is why they struggle so deeply with your absence. It didn't come with permission. It didn't come with a bow or an explanation. It came with finality wrapped in silence. And silence gives them nothing to manipulate. For you, the ending brought clarity. For them, it brought uncertainty. You closed a chapter to protect your peace. They were left holding a story without an ending, a question without an answer. And that imbalance is destabilizing. They may tell themselves they don't care. They may convince others that they ended it first. But control lost is control felt. And every day that you remain gone, every day you do not re-enter the story, that unfinished ending continues to echo. Not because they want you back in the same way you once wanted them, but because the ending didn't belong to them. And that is a loss they feel far more deeply than they'll ever admit. And while they stuck replaying an ending they couldn't control, something remarkable is happening on the other side of that silence. You are healing, quietly, steadily, and without even realizing it at first, your healing becomes the loudest evidence of all. Because nothing challenges a narcissist's sense of superiority more than seeing the person they underestimated rise without them. At first, they may expect you to fall apart. They assume your strength was borrowed from them, that your identity revolved around the relationship, that your confidence would collapse once they were gone. That belief helps them cope with the loss of control. But when time passes and you don't crumble, when you begin to glow in ways they never nurtured, their illusion starts to fracture. Your healing rewrites the story they told themselves. You begin to breathe more freely. Your nervous system softens. Your laughter returns, lighter, more genuine. You make choices that are no longer shaped by fear or approval. And even if they only catch glimpses from afar through others or in their imagination, it's enough. Because it contradicts everything they believed about their power over you. Your growth becomes proof that they were not the source of your worth. Your peace becomes proof that chaos was never your nature, and your forward movement becomes proof that what they framed as weakness was actually resilience waiting for space. This is what they feel every day, not just your absence, but your evolution. The realization that you didn't need them to survive, that you didn't need their validation to become whole, that the role they thought they played in your life was never as central as they believed. And here's the part that cuts the deepest. Your healing happens without their involvement. They don't get credit. They don't get acknowledgement. They don't get a seat in the process. You didn't heal to prove anything. You healed because you chose yourself. That quiet transformation becomes undeniable proof. Proof that leaving was not your downfall, it was your beginning. And for someone who needed to believe they were irreplaceable, watching you become more yourself without them is a truth they carry, whether they admit it or not. And as you continue to move forward, something else begins to happen on their side of the distance, something they cannot fully escape. Memory steps in, not the version they tell others, not the edited story where they are untouchable and unaffected, but the quiet, persistent memory that surfaces when distractions fail. They are skilled at dismissing kindness in the moment. While you were present, your care became expected, your loyalty assumed, your effort invisible. It was easy for them to overlook what you gave because it was always there. But absence changes the way memory works. When something is no longer available, the mind replays what it once relied on. Your voice shows up in their thoughts when they least expect it. The way you handled Xi'ans, the steadiness you brought into chaos, the emotional safety you provided without being asked. These memories don't arrive as nostalgia, they arrive as contrast. They highlight what is missing now, what no one else quite replicates. Memory becomes a quiet prison, not dramatic, not obvious, but constant. Because they cannot rewrite what they felt when you were there. They can try to minimize it, but the body remembers stability. The nervous system remembers calm. And once that calm is gone, it leaves behind an absence that no distraction fully fills. What makes this especially difficult for them is that memory doesn't respond to ego. They can perform confidence, but memory interrupts it. They can chase admiration, but memory compares it. They can convince others they've moved on, but memory doesn't follow the script. And while you are creating new experiences, new meanings, new versions of yourself, they are occasionally pulled backward by moments they didn't realize mattered at the time. Moments where your presence made life easier, softer, more grounded. This is not about them suddenly valuing you the way they should have. It's about recognition arriving too late. Memory shows them what they lost without offering a way to reclaim it. There is no rewind, no redo, no access point back to what once was. So even as you build a future untethered from the past, memory keeps a quiet record on their side, a record of the stability, care, and emotional weight you carried. And in that record, they are reminded again and again that some losses don't shout. They linger. And as those memories linger, another truth quietly settles in, one they never fully acknowledged while you were there. You were the anchor, the steady presence that kept everything from drifting too far, too fast, too far out of control. While they moved through life in extremes, you were the one who grounded the moments. You brought balance where there was volatility, reason where there was impulse, calm where there was emotional turbulence. You anticipated moods, softened edges, smoothed conflicts before they became storms. Not because it was your responsibility, but because you cared. They leaned on that stability more than they ever admitted. It allowed them to appear composed, functional, even successful to the outside world. What no one saw was how much of that stability was borrowed. You were holding emotional weight that was never meant to be yours alone. Now that you're gone, the imbalance becomes noticeable. Things feel heavier, reactions feel sharper, relationships feel more chaotic. Without an anchor, everything drifts. And even if they can't name why life feels less steady, they feel the difference in their body. The calm they once moved through is gone, replaced by restlessness and agitation. This is where memory and reality collide. They remember how grounded things felt, and they live in the contrast of how unstable things feel now. Others may come and go, but few can replicate the quiet strength of someone who consistently held space without demanding control. What makes this realization painful is that anchors are often noticed only when they're no longer there. Stability doesn't announce itself. It works silently. And once it's removed, the chaos it prevented becomes visible. You were not dramatic. You were not loud. You didn't demand attention for the weight you carried. And that's exactly why it's felt now. Your absence doesn't create a single moment of loss. It creates ongoing imbalance. And while you are no longer holding anyone steady but yourself, they are left navigating emotional waters without the grounding presence they once relied on. Even if they never say it, even if they never fully understand it, they feel the loss of that anchor every day. Because stability, once experienced, is never truly forgotten. And from that imbalance, the final truth quietly emerges, the one that ties everything together. Because when the anchor is gone, when the memories linger, when control is lost and the ego is stripped back, there is only one message left standing: freedom, your freedom. Not the loud kind, not the performative kind, but the unmistakable freedom of someone who is no longer bound to chaos, explanation, or emotional labor. The freedom of choosing yourself without guilt. The freedom of living without bracing for someone else's moods. The freedom of peace. And that freedom becomes the final message they cannot rue. Right. They can distort the past. They can deny the impact. They can create new stories where you were replaceable or temporary. But they cannot erase the truth that you walked away and built a life that no longer includes them. They cannot undo the fact that you found calm without their presence, strength without their approval, joy without their permission. Your peace exposes what their control never created. Because if they truly didn't need you, your absence wouldn't feel this heavy. If you truly didn't matter, your freedom wouldn't feel this threatening. But it does. And that's because your freedom stands as quiet proof that the power they believed they had was never real. You didn't escape dramatically. You didn't leave with revenge in your heart. You left with clarity. And clarity is something they can't manipulate. Every day you live unbothered, unhooked, and emotionally unavailable to the past. You send a message without saying a word. The chapter is closed and the story continued without them. That is the final truth they carry. Not because you wanted to be unforgettable, but because you chose to be free. And freedom has a way of echoing, especially in the spaces where control once lived. And that freedom, that quiet, unshakable peace you carry, becomes the ultimate truth, the proof they feel every single day. Because what they cannot control, what they cannot manipulate, and what they cannot reclaim is your choice to live fully without them. Your peace is a mirror of everything they lost, and every day it reminds them that their version of reality no longer shapes yours. They may fill their days with distractions, new relationships, or even performances of confidence, but none of it erases the reality of your absence. Your life moves forward with intention, with purpose, with joy, and with boundaries that cannot be breached. And in that movement, they are reminded, often in fleeting, quiet moments, of what they underestimated, of what they took for granted, of the depth of what they allowed themselves to lose. What makes this proof so undeniable is that it doesn't require confrontation. You don't need to explain your growth. You don't need to seek validation for your choices. You simply exist outside of their narrative, and in doing so, you reveal the truth of your worth. They cannot gaslight your freedom, twist your progress, or diminish your resilience. Every laugh you share, every morning you wake without dread, every decision you make on your own terms is proof, silent, consistent, unstoppable proof, that they felt your absence in ways they cannot admit and cannot erase. And this is the lesson, the powerful reminder for anyone who has walked away from someone who tried to diminish them. Presence is valuable, but absence is transformative. By choosing yourself, by protecting your energy, by embracing your freedom, you send a message that cannot be silenced. It's the message that echoes louder than any words, stronger than any guilt, and permanent in a way that control can never achieve. Your absence is proof. Your life is proof. And they feel it every single day.